Tell us, what have you taken? Or the way you framed it to me before was, what have you not taken?
Right, well, I'd just say I mainly take party drugs, stuff such as ecstasy, pills, methadone, MDMA, cocaine, anything apart from injecting. That's usually my main rule. I wouldn't take anything too hardcore, crystal meth, heroin, or inject anything like crack cocaine.
So what would make you not take those drugs?
The fact of having to inject them and take them in those ways, I think that's a bit more dangerous. It's much easier just to snort a line of cocaine, swallow a pill, rather than having to get needles and through your veins. I think that's just a little bit too far and a bit too hardcore, especially on a night out. If you're partying or with friends or in a club, you're not going to do something as extreme as that.
Tell us about the ones that you have taken. Name some names, because there's quite a few out there that we know about.
But obviously methadone used to be illegal. No, sorry, it is illegal. Also like pills, ecstasy, MDMA, cocaine.
What about the so-called legal highs? Have you tried them?
Legal highs, obviously methadone used to be legal. There's so many substitutes for it nowadays that you could buy, but I don't touch them. I've had quite a number of friends who've had bad experiences. They seem to mess with your mind a lot more. It seems to be safer to stick with the illegal drugs rather than the legal highs and the party pills and party powders you can seem to pick up on the high street.
Tell us about their experiences. What kind of things have they experienced?
I know quite a few people who you get a legal high, some sort of cannabis that you smoke that you could buy from pipe shops. I know quite a number of people from Edinburgh who have ended up in psychiatric wards from smoking too much of that. Now I know health experts say that cannabis could cause mental health issues, but from most cases and from what you hear on the news, it's not usually right away. It's usually after many years of use or prolonged use. But I know quite a number of people who, after short periods of time from smoking this legal cannabis or legal whatever they'd like to call it, have had such bad experiences they've ended up in psychiatric wards and mental hospitals.
What about PMA, Pink Panther, AMT, these types of things? Do you know anybody who's taken them? And if so, what's happened? Have they had any bad experiences?
I've taken a few things like that myself, party pills and those things that are supposed to be legal and supposed to be a bit more safer. And obviously I've quite an experience in taking drugs, and it made me feel somewhat unwell, so I can understand somebody who maybe doesn't take stuff, who sees something as legal and maybe uses it as more of an excuse. A lot of people maybe wouldn't take an illegal drug thinking it's bad, or seeing something that's legal and assuming that it is much safer. I've had nights ruined or nights cancelled because I've taken stuff like that in clubs and been forced to go home just because of feeling unwell.
What kind of unwell are we talking about here?
Feeling sick, can't being sick, sweating, feeling faint, and obviously my body's maybe a bit more experienced from taking drugs for a number of years, or maybe just I've not taken as much as these other people. I could imagine somebody who is taking quite a bit of these so-called legal highs having more adverse effects.
So tell us, when did you start taking them and why did you start taking drugs? I mean, you seem like a young guy to me.
Yeah, well, quite a few of my friends sort of done it. The first drug I ever took was amphetamine speed, simply because when it came in the form, it was, you just put it in your mouth, you swallowed it, rubbed it into your gums, it was sort of paste. I didn't want to start by snorting lines of cocaine, or that always sounded quite, even that sounds quite extreme, I says, but it was a number of friends on a night out said, oh, you just rub this into your mouth, just put it in your mouth, it doesn't taste too bad, have a wee drink of it. And it did give you a little buzz, a little high, and it did progress from then. Started taking stuff like methadone, because at that time it was legal, and then obviously when it became illegal, I did try a number of the legal highs, but they didn't seem as good. You just didn't feel well on them, so that's when I started using more drugs like methadone when it was illegal, trying things like pills, MDMA, cocaine, things like that.
And what is the reason why you do it?
I'm not a big drinker, to be honest. I could have 2 or 3 vodkas and feel pretty drunk, and then after a couple of hours, come midnight, I'm ready to go to my bed, passed out. With these kind of drugs, I could easily stay up 2 or 3 days, not a problem, and a lot of my friends circle do as well. Since moving to Glasgow, when you take things like this, you become involved in more circles of friends who do where I stayed before, not as many people did, so you had to go out of your way. Now in a general night out or a party, most of the friend circle and most of the friends you're with are taking them, so it's much easier and it becomes into more of a lifestyle. Also, most of the people I hang about, we don't have a general 9 to 5 work schedule. People work flexible, people work nights, people have different shifts, so the party generally doesn't have to stop on a Sunday. With these kind of drugs, you don't feel tired, you don't have to stop, you drink too much vodka, you end up passing out, or you've got to go to sleep. With these drugs, you don't. And I have so many friends who take them every day. Not to huge extents, but they'll have a bit here and there, and they could generally function on these kinds of drugs.
Why would they take it every day? If we're just talking about you taking it for a night out at a party, going clubbing or something, why do they feel the need to do it every day?
Well, it's usually if they've had a rough night, if they've been out the night before, or you're a little bit tired in the morning. We all know people who sell these kind of drugs, we all know people who take them a lot, so if you've got a little bit left over from the night before, just a tiny little bump here, a little line here, just to keep you going.
And would you ever go a day without taking something?
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah, it's not an addiction. It's not in the sense that's not that I need them, but it's being able to function if you choose. If you've had a rough weekend or something that comes to Monday morning, everybody gets the Monday morning blues. Although I would never think of having a drink of vodka in the morning, why not have a little line in the morning just to keep yourself going?
Line of coke or line of
what?
Methadone, mainly methadone. Methadrone's less than half the price of cocaine, and it's 2 or 3 times as strong in most cases.
So you're saying it's really prevalent in the Glasgow sort of club scene, or
Yeah,
just among your friends, or
No.
what kind of people are you talking about, professions that are doing this?
I know people who are managers, quite high up in jobs, every kind of sector you can imagine. I know nurses and doctors who, at the weekends or at nights, will take these kinds of drugs.
And why are they taking them?
Because they enjoy it, the hit, the buzz you get. People don't enjoy it, or a lot of people I know don't enjoy drinking as much, especially for the cost of drink, and for less than that price they can be in their own home among all their own friends and have a time twice as good.
And you know about the dangers, because tell us what happened to you just a couple of weeks ago.
Oh yeah, also substance GHB, it's liquid ecstasy. Can be quite dangerous, it's quite known as date rape, but taken in smaller doses it gives quite a euphoric high, quite similar to ecstasy. Now, it's got a bad name for being called date rape. Now, that's used in its purest form. But when I once took it accidentally in the pure form, and I ended up in a coma in intensive care. It's about 10 or 15 times stronger than vodka. So as it's shotted in such small amounts, when I took that amount, I didn't realise it was the pure liquid rather than the diluted stuff, and I did end up in a coma in intensive care.
Did that not give you a fright? Did that not make you think, I'm going to stop doing this?
It did, yeah. Yeah, it did give a bit of a wake-up call, and I do take it a lot less just now. There are more important things. Sometimes it's a bit easy to get carried up, being quite young and living in the city and knowing so many people that do it. So it did give a wake-up call. But it's not, maybe it sounds stupid enough, but it's not enough to make me stop taking stuff completely. That wasn't at a party. That wasn't from you hear people drinking too much and getting their stomach pumped. You see every night and every day on TV and in town, hundreds of people falling about the place, drinking too much. The damage they're doing to their body, I believe that they're doing just as much damage as I am. That was one day during the day, and it was a completely accidental thing where I was completely compass mentis and straight knew what I was doing. Obviously not completely knew what I was doing, but it was a general accident. It's not as if I was at a party and took too much because I was wanting to enjoy myself and wanting to get more high or more sort of wasted on drugs. It was a complete accident.
And what did the doctors tell you? Did they tell you that you could have died?
I mean, what was
Yeah,
it?
yeah. If I'd taken any more, I could have died. But the problem was the doctors didn't know what to do. I had a team of 6 doctors around me not knowing what to do at all, because they have no knowledge. They have no knowledge of these kind of drugs, and they have no idea what to do.
This was this GHB type drug. Yeah. So what kind of solution were they coming up with to try and help you in the hospital? What were they trying to do to help?
Well, I was lying on a saline drip in A&E, and they didn't know what to do. So I was sedated, because it does make you take fits and seizures. So I had to be just sedated so that I couldn't move and let it pass through my system, and it eventually did after 24 hours.
Your partner was the one that told them what to do, you told
Yeah,
me.
yeah. I think sometimes the people who take the substances have a lot more knowledge. There's a place called the Club Drug Clinic in London, who are an NHS-run service who specialise in stuff like ketamine, GHB, cocaine, ecstasy, because I think there's a lot more knowledge among hospitals and addiction centres about addictive drugs. If somebody mentions you're on drugs, you think of heroin, you think of sort of hardcore injectable drugs, but there obviously is a whole new culture of people who take party drugs, who wouldn't use, I hate to use this word, but if you think of somebody who takes drugs, you think sort of junkie, you think somebody sort of hardcore, wasting their life away, don't have a job, and it's not like that at all. There is a whole other side of things, but the NHS, the hospitals, the addiction centres don't seem to be keeping up with that. I was speaking with one of the addiction centres, they asked me to look through one of their forms, and never had any of the drugs that I've taken on their list of forms. And I did mention it to them, I went, why don't you have any of the more modern, the more readily available drugs that younger people are taking? They seem to be quite outdated. So as I was saying, this place, the Club Drug Clinic in London, they're specialists in this kind of thing. They deal with people every day who take party drugs or have just taken too much.
I mean, that's why you decided to come on board with a Bitter Pill campaign, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
you feel that there's knowledge that needs to be shared, people
Yeah.
need to be more...
Oh, that sounds
It's quite stupid. I've been actually informing some of the agencies or giving them contacts to get in touch with. There's a place called Crew 2000 in Edinburgh. They seem to be the most sort of up-to-date people in Scotland. They're the only people who even know. I've spoken to some of these addiction centres and I've mentioned different drugs and they don't even know what they are, which sounds crazy. They're the ones that are supposed to be able to help. It's quite a big step maybe for some people to phone these centres to ask for advice, and if the answer they get is we don't even know what you're taking, it's not going to be very much motivation or very much reason for people to take help. So I think there is a lot that needs to be done. I watched a documentary online. It was a group of leading doctors and different sort of officials across the UK who compiled a drug survey of the 20 most dangerous drugs in the UK, and ecstasy was very low down. There's very, very little deaths. And they said if you look at the list, the way I think the law stands at the moment, I don't know when the drugs were last classified, but it was a long time ago. It was tens of years ago, which is not relevant nowadays. More people die of alcohol and sort of smoking from cigarettes every year. There are drugs that are a lot more safer, and I don't know if the answer is maybe legalising some bits and pieces, but I think the system definitely needs to be looked at.
Now, the surgeon I spoke to at the hospital here in Glasgow told me he thinks there could be a rise in people coming in with problems after taking so-called legal highs or ecstasy cut with bad things, that he thinks it could be in line with the economic downturn. People are a bit low, a bit depressed, maybe looking for something to give them a buzz at the weekend. Would you think that's relevant to your people?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah, I mean, most of the people, like I say, who are sort of professionals who have good jobs, and I do have a good job myself, it's an escape at the weekend. I'm not a big drinker. I don't enjoy getting steaming drunk off a bottle of vodka. I think it's more of a downer, sitting drinking. It does lift your mood. Obviously there's the other side as well. You've got your come downs, you've got bits and pieces, but it's an escape. It takes you to that sort of better place, and you're in that place with all your friends. You're in a sort of happier place. So definitely, I could definitely see how people end up like that. But also, with the rise in people who are taking stuff, are the rise in sort of counterfeit drugs and drugs cut with different things. Obviously, the green Rolexes that have been going around, quite a lot of different bits and pieces. Drug dealers and people who are manufacturing the drugs are obviously going to capitalise on any excuse they can to, if more people are after ecstasy or pills or cocaine or anything, they're going to try and cut it with more. So it's a big problem.